Good morning, everyone. Everybody good? Well, last year and this, we've spoken continuously about the need to bring police and community together, keep the city safe, and also deepen the partnership between police and community. I've said repeatedly, we are blessed to have the finest police force anywhere in the world. And this police force is keeping us safer all the time. But we still have work to do in bringing our neighborhoods, our communities closer to the men and women who protect them. And that we are dedicated to. I was elected with a mandate to address this issue. We are addressing it continuously. And today is another example of the progress we're making. Since day one, Commissioner Bratton has made clear his devotion to the notion that we will protect and respect all the residents of this city, and that has been the watchword of his entire career, the notion of creating that atmosphere of respect and partnership. You've seen it in an extraordinary number of initiatives that this commissioner has undertaken in just 11 months. Body cameras are going to be an important additional step in the reforms that we're undertaking. I think a step that's going to greatly increase the confidence of the people in this city and their relationship with the NYPD. Before I go on, I'd like to thank so many of my colleagues who are here. First of all, thank and acknowledge someone who's been a great partner in all the work we're doing and the reforms we're undertaking, the chair of the City Council Public Safety Committee, Vanessa Gibson. Thank you for your leadership. And I want to thank all of the leaders of the NYPD who are here with us, who are really playing a crucial role in a number of reforms, including in the implementation of body cameras and the training necessary for the men and women of the force to use them properly, and a whole larger retraining effort that's being undertaken. I want to thank Deputy Commissioner for Information Technology, Jessica Tisch, the Deputy Commissioner for Training, Michael Julian. I want to thank Chief Matthew Pontillo, the Commanding Officer of the Risk Management Bureau, Assistant Chief Teresa Shortell, the Commanding Officer of this extraordinary facility, this new police academy, which I think a number of you are seeing for the first time and is really an incredible step forward for this department. And I want to thank Deputy Inspector Richard D., the Executive Officer of the Academy. Now, we're launching a pilot program for body cameras in 6 of our commands. Today, officers, as you saw, are training in the use of body cameras. And what's striking, I think a lot of people in this city will quickly learn, is how light the body cameras are, how easy they are to use, how much they can become a part of the everyday work of the NYPD, while in no way impeding what our officers do to keep us safe. And the demonstration you saw a moment ago points out how quickly we're going to be able to train the men and women of the NYPD to use these body cameras effectively. And they're going to give us a lot more information to work with. One of the things that has typified the success of this commissioner is his devotion to getting information, to getting data, and using it to keep people safe, to figure out new and innovative ways to approach this work. This is another way to get information, to create transparency, to create accountability. So the body cameras, again, these will go live in 3 commands this Friday, this week. Starting on Friday, body cameras will be piloted in 3 commands. So this is going to become a new and important part of what we do here in this city. The 6 commands overall I mentioned have been chosen in part because they've had historically a high rate of stop and frisk incidents. And when we settled the stop and frisk case, the Floyd case, earlier this year, part of that settlement involved an agreement to go into this kind of pilot program and to focus it on the areas where there had been a particular need for more clarity, more transparency, more accountability. We believe this is going to be a very important step forward for our police department and for our city. The pilot's going to tell us a lot. It will proceed over the next few months. It will tell us a lot about how we can use these cameras, how quickly we can implement them on a larger basis. Our goal is, of course, to use these cameras on a broader basis, but first We have to find out how they'll work in real conditions in New York City and figure out the logistics and the other dynamics of using them on a wider scale. But this pilot program, I think, is a sign of great hope and possibility of something that will not only give us that additional information, but really give people greater confidence. When something happens, to have a video record of it from the police officer's perspective, it's going to help in many, many ways. It's going to improve the work of law enforcement. And God forbid, when something goes wrong, we're going to have a clear understanding of what happened and whatever approaches we need to take as a result. The cameras are just one of a number of reforms that we have instituted. They're going to fundamentally change the relationship between police and community and improve our work in public safety in the city. Just to name them, one, of course, the great reduction in stops, the ending of a broken policy of overuse of stop and frisk. Over the first 3 quarters of this year, the number of stops down 79%. Second, reduced arrests for low-level marijuana possession. In the 2 full weeks since the policy was implemented, low-level marijuana arrests are down more than 60%. Third, retraining every officer in the NYPD. Again, something this commissioner understands so well from having been a force for reform and change for decades. He understands it all begins with how you train the people who do the work. A full-scale retraining of this police force in this extraordinary facility is going to do a lot to improve the way our officers work with community members, improve the way they deal with each interaction, obviously work for a reduction in the use of excessive force. Fourth, the oversight entities, the reinforced CCRB, the first Inspector General we've ever had here in this city for the NYPD, will add additional public confidence and transparency. Fifth, as we announced yesterday, a major new investment of $130 million in mental health programs. So much of what our officers encounter every day are challenges related to mental health. Emotionally disturbed individuals who sadly end up involved in the criminal justice system when, in fact, their problems are fundamentally health problems. Our officers understand that. We need to give them more support, and these investments will help us to get to the root of the problem by addressing the mental health needs of so many of our people. All these reforms are underway right now because of this commissioner and his team. These reforms are happening, and are happening quickly. One thing I can say about Commissioner Bratton, and I say it with tremendous admiration, no grass grows underneath his feet. He is quick when he sees a problem to address it. He understands, I think, better than anyone in this country how quickly and effectively reform can be achieved. But we said all along it had to go hand in hand with efforts to keep us safe and, in fact, make us safer. And that's why we're so proud of what we announced yesterday, an overall reduction in crime by 4.4% this year compared to last. We need to do both at the same time. We need to reduce crime. We need to keep people safe while at the same time bringing police and community closer together. I think the body cameras will be an important new element in that deepening relationship between our police and our communities. Just a moment in Spanish before I call upon Commissioner Bratton. El viernes, los oficiales de policía de la ciudad de Nueva York van a empezar a usar cámaras en sus cuerpos. Este es un paso importante en el cultivo de confianza entre la policía de Nueva York y la comunidad. With that, it's my great pleasure to call forward Commissioner Bratton. I want to thank him again for the focus and the speed with which he has implemented reforms. I think this is going to be an important day for New York City as we move forward with these body cameras. I want to thank him for his leadership. Commissioner Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your very generous comments. And following along the theme of thank yous, Letitia James, the public advocate, is here, has been a strong proponent, supporter of this concept. And we're going to need that support along with that of the City Council when we go forward seeking the funding to fully implement this program over the next year or so. Secondly, thank you over to my right, your left, the team that put this initiative together and is putting all of the technology initiatives that the mayor referenced, a couple of $100 million worth of technology, moving the NYPD very quickly into a leadership role in the 21st century. Jessica Tisch is Deputy Commissioner for Information Technology and has just done an absolutely incredible job on this project as well as many others, and assisted by the able staff that she works with. Secondly, welcome to the new police academy, which we will formally open in January. And we'll have you back and give you a full tour of this enormous facility. $750 million of tax dollars to give this department, finally, a first-class training facility. And you saw only one portion of it this morning, the ability to train indoors, to create a street scenario. We actually have a subway car in here that we train our officers on with turnstile arrays, and it is an incredible facility. Even as we're standing here, the first 600 officers that are going through the 3-day in-service training program are in the building, beginning that training. And over the next 4 to 5 months, we'll be training 22,000 police officers here in this building. In addition, the new class that comes in January, almost 1,000 new recruits, will also begin their training in this facility. It's large enough to accommodate all of that. The camera system that we're here to show you today, the pilot program, it's been several months in its creation. We benefited from the learning experience of the LAPD, where I first started looking at these camera systems back in 2005, 2006, when the Brits first began looking at them the first time the technology became available. We have benefited greatly that the LAPD has been into this for almost a year. Jessica and some of her people went out, took a lot of their experience, a lot of their policy experience, and brought it into the pilot program. It literally saved us 6 months to almost a year of startup time. Even as we're here this morning, I have a team flying to London. The Brits, the Metropolitan Police, are about to acquire almost 20,000 cameras for their force. They're an equivalent size agency to us. Bernard Hogan-Howe, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, was in here 2 weeks ago, along with Charlie Beck, the Chief of the LAPD. The three departments are going to be engaging in a full-scale exchange program where we'll be sharing ideas on all types of technology, including cameras. The Brits are experimenting with a camera that I'm particularly interested in that actually shows the person that the officer is facing what the officer is videotaping. So you're on candid camera from the moment the officer starts talking with you. I think that will definitely change behavior very quickly. So the initiative, just to sum it up, that this pilot program will take about 3 months to allow these 50-some-odd officers to learn for us, built on the LA experience, help us to develop the policies, procedures, understand the equipment that we're testing. This is one of 2 cameras that we're testing. The other is a TASER product. Will be half of the precincts, the 3 precincts, will be doing the TASER product. The other half will be working with the device that you've seen this morning. We fully expect after that period of time that we'll put together the budget proposals to move forward to start equipping thousands of our officers with these devices as quickly as possible. This will be happening simultaneously with the initiative to move forward with the 6,000 tablets and the 35,000 smartphones that we'll be looking to implement in the department over the next year or so. A lot happening, a lot of new training, a lot of new technology, a lot of new policies. So I can't thank Jessie Tisch and her people enough because, as you can see, there's a lot going on in the organization at the moment. As I mentioned, we're going to endeavor to give you DVDs of what the cameras saw during the exercise that you just recorded, so that you can see the perspective of the officer coming up on the observer side and the officer coming up on the driver side as to what they actually see in the audio that they're capturing as part of that traffic stop. And so with that, I think, Mr. Mayor, turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Let me bring up the public advocate and thank her. You know, I want to say that Tish James was one of the strongest voices anywhere in the country, really, talking about what cameras could do in terms of increased transparency and accountability and bringing police and community together. So, Tish, I know you've tried these before, but since you got your own, I know you're a believer. So I wanted to offer you a chance to speak about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Police Commissioner Bratton. So there's no question that national events and the recent announcement by President Obama to allocate federal dollars to equip 50,000 more police nationwide with body cameras have changed the national discussion. And police community relations can only be improved with real, meaningful reform that restores the public's faith in those who are charged with defending them. And since July, I've been calling for the department to outfit officers with body-worn cameras, because it's clear that cameras will be able to provide law enforcement with an objective record of police-civilian encounters. Police-worn cameras are the single most effective way to enhance accountability and transparency in policing by providing an objective record of police-civilian encounters. And so we cannot be hesitant to incorporate technology into our public safety practices, from body cameras to bullet tracking technology. Not to mention, body-worn cameras will save our city money in settlements. Just last week, it was reported that New York incurred $212 million in legal costs last fiscal year settling police-related lawsuits. $212 million. If we add it up over the last 5 years, we spent roughly $1 billion on these claims. It is my hope that uniform officers and other performing patrol work will be required to activate the camera during all law enforcement-related encounters. This includes, as we just witnessed, traffic stops, pedestrian stops, arrests, searches, interviews, and pursuits. Once activated, the camera should remain recording until the conclusion of an incident or an encounter. Now, I recognize that the law has not kept pace with technology, and my office will be reviewing local and state laws, particularly as it relates to access and storage and privacy and data retention. And I urge the department that they should work with civil liberty advocates and others to safeguard whatever footage is captured by these cameras, with data to be required for as long as the statute of limitations for filing a claim against the police department, which is in New York, which is about 3 years. And it's cheaper, I think it bears repeating, it's cheaper to buy these cameras than it is to pay the hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuits that our city pays out each year. I again commend Mayor de Blasio and Police Commissioner Bratton, and as well as my friend, Councilmember Vanessa Gibson, the Chair of Public Safety, as I look forward to working with the administration to ensure this pilot program runs efficiently and effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take questions on topic, and then we'll do some off topic. Yes, sir.
The public advocate spoke pretty heavily about this in August, and can you just talk about how long this?
I like that pride of authorship.
from August to December, how did this happen so quickly? And just speaking about the cameras, what will happen with the footage that's stored, and how long will it stay around?
On the technical questions, I'll turn to Deputy Commissioner Tisch and her colleagues. But on the first point, look, this has been something that's been evolving. First of all, we had the settlement in the Floyd case, in which we readily agreed to a pilot program. The public advocate and others urged us to speed up that process and think about the possibility of going farther if the pilot were successful. And the more we've looked at it, the more we've found that we believe we have a viable option here that could work for the long run. I remember the first conversations we had at One Police Plaza with Deputy Commissioner Tisch and others. The real issues that the public advocate just raised, the data storage, the confidentiality issues, they were daunting at first, especially in such a large city with such a large police force. But with each passing week, there's been more and more confidence that we could get this right. And, we've looked forward to the day when we could actually go live and try it out on the streets of the city. And we're really looking forward to Friday. So it's been an evolution, but one that has been very positive. Do you want to talk about I'm sorry, Commissioner. Go ahead.
As I mentioned, I first became aware of body cameras 2005, 2006, when the Metropolitan Police in London began experimenting with them. I was the chief of police in Los Angeles at that time and followed it closely during my time in L.A. The technology at that time was still very primitive. Upon my appointment as commissioner, I'd stayed involved in policing as a consultant. In February, when I appointed Jessie Tisch, Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, asked her to assemble a team to get out to L.A. and take a look at what they had been doing as aware of their initiative. So Jessie was out there in March of this year beginning the dialogue, taking a look at what they were doing. So it's taken a few months to get it up and running, get the policies in place, make sure we had the right cameras. There's a lot of different cameras on the market, so we wanted to make sure they were testing. Police Foundation came up with the initial $50,000 to go buy these cameras. Saved us a lot of time, probably saved us 3 to 6 months in that process. So it's been, as the mayor has indicated, an evolutionary process, one over many years, but one that's been accelerated. And the public advocate support for it, city council support, I'm not aware of anybody that's actually opposed to this concept, but that's helpful to facilitate moving these processes forward.
This is both for the, I guess, for Commissioner or the Mayor. You said, the sergeant said there's a 3.8 second delay from when the officer flips the camera on to when it begins to record. Is there any, is that also true for the other cameras you're considering? Because is there a concern about, you know, things happen fast sometimes when you're doing an arrest or something and you might miss something in those 3.8 seconds?
I'll pass it to Jesse just by saying the obvious point here is we're training. This is like any other technology. Let me just state the beginning that this is like any other technology. It comes with the attributes it comes with. It may be changed over time, but this is where the technology has developed to this point. So the training takes into account what it takes to activate. You saw a very conscious decision when to activate. That's part of the training to prepare officers to be aware of the time they need to get it into position.
We're testing 2 different types of camera. So the camera that we're testing today does have 3.8 second activation period. The other camera that we are going to be piloting in 3 commands has 3 different modes: fully off, buffer mode, which means that it is constantly recording 30 seconds of video. And then when the officer goes into the 3rd mode, which is activation mode, it saves the audio from the 30-second buffer. So not only do you get the video and audio from the time you turn the camera on, you also get the video from 30 seconds prior to activating the camera. And that's an important thing that we're testing.
Is there a technology now where some of the body cameras just record constantly, like in Rialto, California? Do they have that?
We are not. I believe that it's the same product that we're discussing here is the constant 30-second buffer.
What you might want to speak
We're looking at a number of factors. Another important one that the commissioner just pointed out was battery life. And we need these cameras to work for an officer's entire tour. So we are looking at the implications of how much recording drains the battery on the different devices.
Wait, here, then you. Hold on.
Mayor or Commissioner Blasio, could you explain the balance between the privacy concerns and meeting your stated goal of providing hope for more accountability? Because if the footage isn't released publicly, how does that achieve your goal of having the public?
Yeah, I think this is part of why we have a pilot program to work through those issues. Privacy concerns pervade everything we do in government. So I want to just clarify to folks that we think about that all the time, and obviously legal concerns, but it doesn't stop us from making reforms. I think part of this is seeing how it works in practice and helping us refine that balance.
Part of the reason you do a pilot, do a test period, is to understand all of the pluses and minuses, privacy concerns being one of them, that we are a police department. We do conduct investigations, and a lot of those investigations, as you're well aware, have to remain confidential while we move forward with them. We are dealing with a lot of unexplored territory on this issue that the public, I don't think, you in the media and we in the police profession and the courts, for that matter, don't fully understand. We're going to all learn together. One of the issues that surfaced very quickly is FOIL. Seattle police are dealing with an individual who's foiling every camera all the time, to the extent that Seattle is thinking of abandoning its initiative because it can't afford it. The idea of, so you can imagine the department's going to have 30,000 of these things. If some character out there using his FOIL rights wants to see 30,000 every day, and that's reality. That's not basically making this up, if you will. And there's the issue of when does it get turned on, when does it get turned off. There's all types of aspects there. So, and also reliability. The officer oftentimes engaged in a struggle. We're examining retention devices to make sure it doesn't fall off the uniform. So we're in a new field here. This is not a complete science as of this time.
Can you just clarify? You mentioned 3 precincts are testing the cameras and 3 are testing a taser-like device, or are
No, not taser. Simply the brand name, not the device that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Just
There's the 3 precincts that are here today: PSA 2, 40, and the 120, using the device that you saw this morning. The 3 other precincts, and these are the 6 entities that were identified by the judge in her ruling. So that's why we chose those 6. Those other 3 will complete their training by next week. They're equipped with a second device, so we can, and that's the device that Jesse just described. It's a different type of device. It has a separate battery with a connecting wire to the camera, and the camera can be positioned on glasses, can be positioned on a lapel, and so it has many enhanced features, including that ability to buffer and record 30 seconds before the actual encounter is activated by, or the device is activated by the officer.
And when will that begin? When will those precincts start? Is that
They start next week.
Mayor.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Commissioner, actually, the British cameras that you're interested in, do you happen to know the name of the company that makes them, or the camera and the department that you...
And I don't. Again, I've got a team going over to look at that device to see if they're in fact using it. My understanding is there's many of these devices, as you can imagine, out in the market, and I'm sure after the president announced he wants to buy 50,000 of them, there's a lot more companies racing to put them out on the market. I should point out, as far as the new frontier here, that the device itself, and you can all appreciate this, you all carry smartphones. They're willing to sell you that smartphone for about $250, but what they want is the monthly service fee. The monthly service fee for each of these devices is about $100 a month. So every device we have, we understand that the preliminary cost may be upwards of $1,200 a year for each device. And so it starts getting pretty expensive very quickly. The size of the unit that would have to be available to retrieve video for the courts, the district attorneys, FOIL requests, particularly good luck to Ferguson with its 50 offices. I'm looking at 35,000 offices, so it's a totally different scale.
Mr. Commissioner, you mentioned the issue of turning the cameras on and off, and since that lies in the hands of the police officer, a skeptic might say, well, they can be selective in when they decide to turn it on, when they decide to turn it off, and how can you train for that?
That's effectively what we're doing here, training on the existing guidelines and policies that are in place for this pilot program, which will be enhanced through the experiences over the next 3 months, so that when we go full scale, that we have policies in place that will help to guide the officer as to when do you turn it on, when do you turn it off, when are you required to turn it on, when are you required to have it off. The nature of this is it has to still be left to the officer's discretion and the spontaneity of the moment. Unlike the car cameras that many departments have that can be activated when you turn on the siren or the roof lights, this would have to, the technology today would have to still be manually activated.
If officers don't follow those guidelines, would they be penalized in some way?
That would be built into the, when we go forward with the full-scale initiative, that would be built into the policies, much the same as if they currently violate or willfully violate any of the policies that we currently have in place.
I just want to emphasize, the Commissioner made a very powerful point. This is a brand new field of endeavor, and by definition, we're going to take the time to figure it out and make it work. But you saw in the demonstration, the officers get out of the car immediately. It's going to become an instinctive thing, like so many of us have things we have just learned to do instinctively related to technology. They're going to go turn that on while walking over to the vehicle, thus the video running by the time they actually get to talking to the citizen involved.
So, Commissioner, you mentioned, isn't there a strict policy that will be in place? You mentioned it might be up to their discretion. Will they be required to start reporting the minute they are about to make an arrest or make a stop?
Policies speak to when they will be required to put the cameras on. Again, those policies are draft. That's what we're trying to learn from these officers as to their in actual use. Are they, in fact, feasible? One of the policy provisions based on the recent experience in the pink houses will be the requirement that as officers, those that have engaged in the housing initiative, as they do vertical patrols, to put the camera on as they begin the patrol and then shut it off at the end of the patrol. So there's an example of a recent experience which has now been added into the policy. So it's like an accordion. It expands as we encounter new issues and new incidents. So we're in a learning process right now. This is not a fait accompli. Similarly, for these two camera devices, that's not to say these are the cameras we'll eventually use as new technology becomes available. As we seek to learn from other company agencies that are working on this, we may go in different directions. This is a huge expenditure of funds as well as time commitment, so we want to make sure we get it right once we in fact do it.
Can you just walk through the end of the shift? What do they do at the end of the shift? Do they
That's a very good question. There's a docking device that will be in each of these precinct station houses. Each officer will have an individually assigned device. It's not a shared device like the radios, the walkie-talkies they have. At the end of the shift, they come in, they put the device into the docking device, and then it's uploaded automatically into the filing systems that will retain it, and it will also recharge the device for when they retrieve it again.
Commissioner, which two precincts start Friday, and what is the mandate at this point? What will be taken, other than verticals and cost cuts?
I'll ask Jesse to speak to some of the broad guidelines, but the three that start this Friday are the three that you just saw this morning, the group of officers. That there will be the 120 over in Staten Island, the 40 in the Bronx, and PSA 2 over in Brooklyn. In addition to the officers that wearing the cameras, we also have supervisors from those precincts. The supervisors have to be aware of it because they're going to end up supervising, as well as personnel from Internal Affairs who, if there is an incident, that Internal Affairs is going to have to be able to retrieve the information fairly quickly. So in addition to the officers, there's the supervisory as well as review staff that are also being trained. Jesse, if you want to speak in a broad sense to the policies, understanding these policies, this is a pilot program so that what we end up with versus what we start with may be very different.
So what we have now in the current draft of the policy is 7 different instances in which the officers will be required to turn on the body camera. Those would be all reasonable suspicion stops. Second, enforcement encounters, including for summonsable offenses. Third would be vehicle stops. Fourth would be taking or attempting to take someone into custody, for example, an arrest. Fifth is any use of force incident. Sixth would be an encounter that escalates or becomes adversarial. And seventh, most recently added, as the commissioner said, would be vertical or interior patrols. I should note it's important to say that we do say in the policy that the body camera is not required to be activated in those circumstances if it is unsafe or impractical to do so.
What's the light like on the camera for the vertical patrols, being in the staircases and those kind of things,
No light.
Yeah, that's a separate reality.
Which effect are you hoping that these cameras are going to have on future Eric Garner type events? There was a video there after all. Are you hoping that this will improve, which effect are you hoping?
I think, look, anything that increases transparency and accountability is, in my view, good in public life. So we have a situation here. We're going to see the officer's perspective, literally the officer's perspective on any such event of the type that Jesse just outlined. I think that's powerful. I think that's going to give us a lot more information to work with. And by the way, I think there'll be many instances where this will be important in the crime-fighting process. It's just going to give us more real-time information to work with. Part of what I've emphasized about Commissioner Bratton is that the extraordinary success he has had going back to his first tour of duty here was based on recognizing that we were not acknowledging the information that we had. We were not taking stock of it. We were not making decisions based on data. We weren't realizing what was right under our nose. Well, here's another opportunity where we have the chance to know exactly what happened in each incident. That's going to tell us something about how to handle that particular dynamic, but also it's going to teach us how to do things better going forward. So I think it'll give a lot of public confidence in the process.
I know it's early in the training, but just wondering how the officers have been responding to it. expressed any concerns about wearing it or about it falling off during encounters?
I should emphasize this is like Los Angeles initiative. It's all volunteer. That we have met with all the unions. Unions have not expressed any resistance to the experimental program, so they have not, all credit to the unions, they have not discouraged their members. So we look for volunteers, and we got what we were looking for. The Los Angeles experience was within a very short period of time after the first 50 officers were equipped with the cameras that another 50 wanted them that worked in the same district. So they went quickly to 100. What they also found was that quite frequently officers who did not have cameras were requesting officers with cameras to come and back them up because they wanted a situation documented. The experience also was they began early on estimating an officer out in there. They worked 10-hour tours in L.A., would film an hour, maybe 2 hours out of a tour of duty. Jesse, I think they're up to about an average of about 4 hours on a tour of duty now. So the officers are recording much more comfortably and much more frequently.
And
can you tell me how much you expect to budget this year for this plan?
yeah, I mean, I'll just state the obvious. It's a pilot, and the pilot, as the commissioner mentioned, is paid for by the Police Foundation, which we're very appreciative of.
How much was that?
$50,000.
$50,000. But the where we go from there is going to be dependent on the pilot. Now, again, we predict roughly 3 months for the first phase of the pilot. That's going to tell us a lot in time for the upcoming budget process. You know, that will be obviously in advance of the executive budget. So that will give us an opportunity to make decisions about what we think is practical to do in the next budget. But the commissioner emphasized this is a huge endeavor, never before attempted on the scale of New York City, to say the least. It's going to be something we do step by step. We have to make sure we're doing it right. We have to make sure we're accounting for the very real privacy concerns and technological concerns. But what I can safely say is once we've gotten a first take, we'll then have an opportunity to look at our next budget and determine the place of body cameras in that budget.
Commissioner, you had mentioned some of the issues related to storage at the, I think, September press conference with the police department being so large. What are you guys planning on doing? What's the policy going to be related to storage? Are you going to store everything that they bring in? And will these pilot program videos be foilable?
We're going to have a very big cloud.
You're right. A huge portion of the cost, for sure the greatest portion of the cost associated with this program when it's fully rolled out, will be the data retention. There is no way for us to store the volume of data that we will be collecting on premises, which means we will likely have to use a cloud solution, as the commissioner was referring to, which means you pay by the amount of data that you store. So one important thing that we're learning as part of this pilot is how many hours is an officer going to record per tour, which will tell me how much data I'm going to be storing per tour and tell me how much I'm paying for cloud services. But I think it is most likely that we will have to go the cloud model given the rollout that we're anticipating.
And will these be, the ones in this pilot program be foilable? Because members of the press or anybody foil the video from the pilot program.
And that's part of why we're doing a pilot, to understand what the legal issues are, too. And we have a lot of lawyers. They'll be looking at this. But the commissioner raised the point that there are some ways that this could create an untenable situation in terms of, someone requesting tens of thousands of hours of data when we're trying to simply keep up with it. So we have to sort that out, and we have to, one of the things that's very clear in FOIL dynamics is confidentiality concerns. There are a number of areas that are exempted vis-a-vis FOIL because of confidentiality. That's all to be determined, but what we do know is we have to get started down the road. Again, this is a commissioner who has innovated the use of technology for a quarter century now, but I think he would agree the only way you find out is to start and to learn from the experience of doing it. Rich?
I guess, is LA now fully involved? The whole department has? Do they all have the cameras? And is there any target? I know you're beginning this experimental program right now, but is there any target date when you'd like to see all 35,000?
I'll ask Jesse to speak to LA. I think LA has just finished their one-year-long pilot program that if there's a department that experiments to excess more than in the NYPD, it's the LAPD, that they really take their time doing this stuff. One of the reasons I'm sending the people to London, London is pretty much ready to go forward with 15 to 20,000 of these devices. So that'll give us a sense of a similar size agency for what we may be up against. They have made a decision evidently on what they're going to buy. And so a lot of the questions that Jesse would have may be in fact answered. I think Jesse, one of your people, is with that team that's going over there at this time. So that there's so many unknowns in this thing at this moment. But LA is getting ready to go forward, and I think actually start purchasing devices.
Yes.
We'll take a few more on this, and then we'll do some off-topic. But first, just to finish up, Rich, look, we want to see where this can take us. We obviously, if we can find a way to do it right, if we can address the real legal and confidentiality questions, if we can afford it, we'd like to go deep into the police force. But I want to emphasize that we have to find out how this works. We have to make sure there aren't unintended consequences. Another huge element of public policy is making sure there are not unintended consequences. But we're hopeful, based on what we've seen from the pilots elsewhere, and the response we've gotten here, obviously a number of officers ready and willing to participate. We're hopeful that this will be a very important reform going forward, but it's going to have to go in stages.
How important was the incident on Staten Island with Eric Garner in you guys formulating this pilot? Because the timing
started months before.
Yeah, again, I want to remind you, I would ask for a show of hands almost how many people were at the Brownsville Recreation Center the day we settled the Floyd case, which is when we committed to this pilot program. I'm trying to remember if that was February, March, whatever it was. But the point is we started down the road with that decision to settle the case. What we have found, and again, I want to I think what the Commissioner said was really important, having the voice of the public advocate, the voice of the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and so many other elected leaders saying they believed in this. That consensus was important in saying we're going to really devote even more time and energy to getting this right. But there were very substantial technological issues in the beginning that we had to overcome even to get to a pilot. So we've been going down this road. It's a road we're committed to, and we think it's a road that's going to, it's a plan that's going to really be deeply felt in our communities. Chris.
Commissioner, in LA you mentioned cops requesting cameras. What have they seen, if anything, in changes in behavior on behalf of the public, on behalf of the cops, in the actual doing of the job?
One of the reasons I'm so interested in this, as I attend chiefs conferences, as when I was in the private sector consulting to departments around the country, almost universally what you see is reforms in behavior of officers and reforms in behavior of the public. When the public sees the video, very quickly the complaint goes away. And what we will be doing is if the complaint is made and we have video documentation, before we ask the officer a question, the officer will review the video. The citizen will get a chance to review the video. And I think in the majority of cases, the complaint disappears in the sense that oftentimes the public is not aware of the policies, procedures, authority of the officer. Oftentimes they don't recall their own behavior. Similarly, officers are going to experience around the country has been they are much more conscious of their behavior. Language. Mike Julian, who's heading up the academy, has been focusing early on a lot of attention to language. If we could ban 2 words out of a cop's mouth, we'd eliminate about 50% of the complaints we get. And we're going to work very hard on that and to do that. Rialto, which is a small department, 80, 90 officers, has had phenomenal success. It's received a lot of the attention because it's one of the few departments that every officer has a camera. New Jersey State Police, right next door, asked them complaints against the department.
Excellent. Emily?
Considering the aftermath that we anticipate in light of the Eric Garner grand jury decision, will use of the cameras be limited to those 3 precincts this Friday, or will they be out in the streets if there's any riots?
Well, again, I want to respectfully challenge the question. We do not have anticipation of any particular outcome. We believe, first of all, we don't know what's going to happen in that case. Second, and I said yesterday, I think the NYPD has done an extraordinary job respecting individuals' right to protest, and that's why these protests have been so peaceful. It's been a very impressive body of work by the NYPD working to make sure that people protested but order was kept. So my anticipation is that that's what will continue. But in terms of the cameras themselves, that's a separate matter. This is obviously an initial pilot that's being utilized, again, in the precincts determined by the settlement of the Floyd case. So I want to just emphasize that. There is a pre-existing reason why these were the precincts chosen. All right, let's go to off-topic. Off-topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's actually just technically an on-topic, but
that's cheating. But
what effect will the Obama announcement have the funding for cameras? Will New York City seek some of that funding, or have you thought about that?
Well, we'll certainly seek the funding, but it's a nascent idea. I think the president is exactly right to focus on community policing and to focus on funding for body cameras. Until the funding is actually available, it's still just an idea, but we are very hopeful that that money will become available and that New York City will get its rightful share of it. We're obviously going to be one of the national innovators in this area, one of the best places to test the capacity of these cameras, so hopefully we will get substantial federal funding. Off topic, yes.
Will you be bringing any of the officers to anything involving Eric Garner, any demonstrations? Will any of the officers of the pilot program be allowed to go over there?
9 of the officers that you just saw there are from the 120 precinct in Staten Island. So starting on Friday, they'll be doing their general patrol duties in Staten Island in the 120.
So just as part of their general duties, so it's not.
Yeah, they're not going to be specifically focused on being assigned to demonstrations, etc. They'll be going about their general patrol duties.
It's possible they may be during their general patrol.
And I would just be careful to conjecture. Anything's possible, but it's a very small number of people. It's a pilot program, again, over 6 commands with a total of 54 officers. Be careful to make that assumption. I think when they're going about their general duties, they will activate the cameras when appropriate, but I would not put all that together and assume that means they're going to be at a particular protest. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, the Garner grand jury is meeting today. A decision could happen any moment, today, tomorrow, whenever. I wonder, is the city ready for whatever could happen? And again, as we talked about yesterday, your message and the commissioner's message to people who would come here to protest, especially since many of them may be outside agitators and not, people from New York City.
Well, first, I believe in the right to peaceful protest. It's part of a democracy. And anyone who has views as a result of whatever the decision is, they want to exercise peaceful protest, we welcome that, we respect that. But we also will keep order. But the other message I'd say, I thought the comments of Eric Garner's son were very pertinent here. He said anyone who wants to express themselves should do so peacefully. And his own son, who's lost his father, said, honor my father by doing any protest in a peaceful manner. I thought it was very powerful. He was not just talking about how you go about making changes and reforms. He was talking about the nature of his own father as a peaceful man and honoring his memory by being just as peaceful as that man was. So I think the message to everyone here is let's first of all not assume one outcome or another. We have a judicial process for a reason. It's a deliberative process. NYPD is absolutely prepared. The City of New York is absolutely prepared for any eventuality. But what I would urge anyone who has a view as a result of the outcome is express it peacefully. That's what works in a democracy. And the changes that we are talking about here are examples of the democratic process actually working. I understand cynicism in modern society, but people have eyes to see, and they can see that as a result of the decisions the public made last year, a huge number of things are changing. You're here in the police academy with the police commissioner in the City of New York talking about making sure there are body cameras for greater accountability and transparency on top of a host of other reforms that this department has undertaken. That's the result of the decision of the people. And that's the result, by the way, of a lot of peaceful protest. Think about stop and frisk. A lot of us were at the silent march several years ago, calling for a change in that policy. That policy has been profoundly changed because the people express themselves peacefully. That's what will make change in this city, and that's what we're committed to. Anything else?
The Commissioner also thought.
Sure.
Commissioner, are you ready? And what, again, will the NYPD be doing?
Well, echoing the mayor's comments that we have had quite a bit of time to prepare for the events that will unfold here over the next several days. This is a department that is very well experienced in dealing with demonstrations of all sizes. In an average week, we have almost 150 events that we police. And I think, as we referenced yesterday in yesterday's news conference, that the events over the last 10 days in the city, that we had a total of, I think, 31 arrests and multiple events, that we will take very forceful, effective action against those that are committing crimes, particularly vandalism and crimes of violence. But at the same time, we will seek to allow people to have their First Amendment rights to demonstrate peacefully. Those that would seek to agitate, we will certainly focus efforts on them to ensure that that agitation remains within legal bounds.
If Officer Pantaleo is not indicted, will he still stay on the force? Will there any discipline for him? What's the plan?
The protocol as it would work if the district attorney, not the district attorney, the grand jury returns a true bill. In other words, if they decide to move forward with charges of some sort, the officer would be brought before the court for arraignment. If, however, the grand jury decides no true bill, under the normal process, there'd be no action. But in this case, the request would be made to the judge to announce that, in fact, there is no true bill, that there be no charges filed. The officer is currently on suspension and would remain on suspension while the department moved forward with its administrative processes. In other words, if there are no criminal charges filed against the officer, that the next action, if you will be within the department for us to review if there are any violations of our administrative processes. And then the third avenue is, of course, the federal government looking at it for civil rights violation. And then a fourth course of action is if the family decides to pursue a civil action. So this process, the grand jury, if you will, is just the first of possible 4 different initiatives that might be undertaken.
Let me, Nikita had her hand up, but just before I go to you, I think it's clear, the U.S. Attorney has been looking at this situation closely. So I think one of the things that would be typical in a case like this is the U.S. Attorney would pursue whatever investigation that she has already initiated.
I basically had the same question, but I'm wondering, too, if any of the officers who were present, will you be looking at disciplinary action against them?
The administrative investigation by the department has been underway, parallels the criminal investigation. Upon the closure of the criminal investigation, we will seek access to whatever the district attorney is able to provide to us that would assist us in our administrative investigation. The administrative investigation would look at all elements of the event in terms of the actions of all the officers present. So the administrative side of it would be a different focus than the criminal side of it, and may involve looking at more personnel, may involve additional avenues of investigation that would not have been undertaken on the criminal side.
One more, please. Thank you. I'm from the Chinese TV NTD. Because in Brooklyn there are so many, the Chinese population is growing very fast. And they've been targeted by the criminal. There's so many robbery happened. Every 3 or 2 days, there are some shop owners or even the pedestrian get robbed. So the community, they are very helpless because there are 3 precincts cover those areas, 3 different precincts. They don't know where to go. So I'm not sure if you have aware there's the huge population change in Brooklyn and how.
Yeah, let me jump in. First of all, I just respectfully, we're very aware of the demographics of our city and growing Chinese population, growing Asian population. I would respectfully disagree with any characterization that people are helpless. The commands in that area, I represented that area in the city council, close to some of the Chinese community and right around it. The 7-2 precinct, for example, which reaches some of that area, is very focused on the needs of the community. So there's always work to be done whenever we see any crime pattern. And again, this is what this man innovated 20 years ago, was the notion of we see a pattern, creating a strategy to address it. But I have every reason to believe that the precincts involved are focused on keeping the community safe. All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Folks, Mike DeBonis from my office has some DVDs of the footage. Do me a favor, because if everyone's here, one per outlet, please. Okay?
Don't worry, I'm not going to make
Mike DeBonis has the videos.